With the Russians playing host, the 5 veto-wielding members of the UN Security Council met on Wednesday evening to discuss the wording of a resolution requiring Syria's chemical weapons to be destroyed. Russia doesn't want the resolution to be military enforceable. The US and some of its allies do. So it's up to these men. The US Secretary of State and Russian Foreign Minister will discuss the practicalities of putting those weapons under international control. So all eyes are now on Geneva, here where Lavrov and Kerry will be meeting for vital talks. Both men will be travelling with their own chemical weapons experts. It will be a technical discussion on how to collate and destroy Assad's chemical arsenal. The idea was Russian. Holding on to the diplomatic initiative, President Vladimir Putin has spoken directly to the American people. Writing in the New York Times, President Putin warned that a US strike would increase violence and unleash a new wave of terrorism. It could throw the entire system of international law and order out of balance. Millions around the world would increasingly see America not as a model of democracy, but as relying solely on brute force. The Russian president also maintains that the chemical attack on August the 21st in the suburbs of Damascus was carried out not by the Syrian army, but by the forces of the opposition. A view strongly rejected by the French foreign minister.
Probablement lundi, publication par l'ONU du rapport.
The report by the UN inspectors will probably be published on Monday. I have not seen it yet, but it will say that a chemical attack took place. In theory, it's not part of its brief, but it will certainly give indications. As long as only the regime had the supplies, the carriers, and an interest in carrying it out, we are entitled to draw conclusions.
In New York, the UN Secretary General says his organization is guilty of a collective failure for its inability to find common ground on the Syria crisis.
I hope that the current discussions related to safeguarding Syria's chemical weapon stocks will lead to the Security Council playing an effective role in promoting an end to the Syrian tragedy.
In Damascus, the fading threat of an imminent US strike seems to have relieved some of the tension that had been building up.
After the Russian initiative, tensions began to ease on the streets of Damascus, and this is obvious from the activities in the markets.
But outside the apparent calm of central Damascus, this is a conflict that has claimed the lives of more than 100,000 Syrians and forced 2 million people to leave the country. While President Bashar al-Assad's regime may now stop using its chemical arsenal, most of the dead have been killed by conventional weapons.